Um, Imagine, if you will, walking into an apothecary.
Okay.
You're probably picturing shelves lined with little glass bottles.
Right. Dried herbs hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a heavy mortar and pestle resting on a wooden counter somewhere. But what if, instead of just holding, tinctures and teas for a cough or a scrape, what if that apothecary actually held complex histories of justice?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, histories of systemic power and the really deep, often forgotten relationships between humans and the land.
It completely changes how you look at a simple jar of chamomile sitting in your pantry.
It really does. And we have a truly fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive today that explores exactly that idea.
Yeah, we do.
We're looking at a comprehensive course syllabus and the accompanying student workbook from the University of Maryland. The class is called Reproductive Justice, an Indigenous Feminist Apothecary, and it is taught by Dr. Shelbi Meisner.
And our mission today is to really unpack this. We want to understand a profound paradigm shift. We aren't just going to be memorizing botanical facts or learning how to brew tea.
No, definitely not.
We're going to explore how this specific university syllabus uses an indigenous feminist framework to show that plants are actually, well, they are historical and political actors, and how reproductive justice is about so much more than just birth.
Absolutely. And just to set expectations for you as we dive in, this syllabus tackles some incredibly heavy and widely debated political issues.
It really does.
Over the course of the semester, the students are assigned readings that dive into state violence, mass incarceration, abortion access, gender identity.
Huge topics.
Huge. And our goal today is to map out how this specific university course teaches these concepts. We are completely neutral here.
Right. We aren't taking sides or endorsing the viewpoint.
Exactly. We're just looking to understand the intellectual journey it takes its students on and to see how the course ties those massive societal issues back to the natural world.
And that intellectual journey starts with the total redefinition of reproductive justice.
Because when most people hear that term, they immediately think of biological reproduction.
Right. Pregnancy or modern political debates surrounding healthcare. But the framework of this course expands that lens massively.
I thought that in the course overview, but how exactly does this syllabus define it if it's not just about birth?
So the course argues that reproductive justice is about the decisions communities make at every single life stage.
From birth to death.
Exactly. From the moment a person is born all the way through to their death. It asks how huge systems like colonialism, capitalism, patriarchy, how those systems have actively disrupted a community's ability to care for itself.
And how they've disrupted our relationships with the land, too.
Exactly.
Which brings up a really interesting point about the land itself. The course doesn't just refer to these herbs as biological specimens, it actually calls them plant teachers.
Yeah, that terminology is so intentional.
It is, but there is also a very rigid safety rule right at the beginning of the workbook. Students are absolutely never allowed to consume the plants provided in class.
Never. They actually have to sign a strict safety and allergy contract by the second week of the semester.
Wow.
Yeah, the syllabus is very clear that this is a critical thinking course. It is not a medical training or clinical herbalism course.
Right, they are becoming doctors.
No. The plants are there to be studied for their historical, cultural, and political significance. Consuming them without proper, deeply rooted medical training is treated as a profound lack of respect for the power those plants hold.
Speaking of that critical thinking aspect, I was reading through the course policies and noticed a really specific rule about artificial intelligence.
Oh, the AI policy.
Yeah. Students can use AI to brainstorm creative ideas, but they are explicitly forbidden from using it to get information about plant safety or toxicity.
Which is such a smart rule.
But how does the course actually prove to the students that AI or, just a quick internet search is dangerous for plant medicine?
It does that through an exercise in week 2 called the Starseed activity.
Oh.
The students work in small groups, which the syllabus calls pods, for the entire semester. And for this activity, the pods are given a research task to look up anise seed, star anise, and Japanese star anise.
Okay, let's unpack this because those sound incredibly similar.
They do, and that is exactly the trap. They have to figure out which one is safe to give to children.
Oh, wow.
And the catch is that Japanese star anise is highly toxic. It contains compounds that can cause severe neurological issues and seizures.
But because of their names.
Right. Because of the modern supplement industry, globalization, just general internet misinformation, it often gets confused or even cross-contaminated with regular star anise.
Which is the one traditionally used in cooking and teas, right?
Exactly. And AI chatbots often scrape this blended, inaccurate data and just present it as fact.
So the students have to navigate this maze of modern misinformation to find the truth.
They do. It proves to them right out of the gate that you cannot just Google a plant and trust the first result you see.
Because it lacks context.
Right. When plant knowledge is stripped of its cultural context, its history, its geographical origins, it becomes disconnected. And the course teaches that disconnected plant knowledge isn't just unreliable, it is genuinely harmful.
That sets a really intense, respectful tone for the rest of the semester.
It really anchors the whole framework.
Let's look at how the syllabus moves through the actual life stages, starting with birth and childhood. The birth unit pairs gentle plants like chamomile, calendula, and raspberry leaf with some incredibly heavy readings.
Yeah, the contrast is really stark there. The students study those specific plants because historically they've been used to soothe babies, heal postpartum skin, strengthen the uterus.
Very nurturing things.
Yes, but the course places those nurturing plants right alongside readings about the history of forced sterilization, environmental racism, and what the course terms colonial reproductive violence.
I noticed the syllabus frequently uses the word futurity in this section. What does that term actually mean in the context of these readings?
Futurity essentially refers to a community's ability to have a future, to survive, grow, and continue its lineage and culture.
So it's about looking forward.
Exactly. The readings explore how the state has historically tried to control the futurity of marginalized communities right at the moment of birth.
By deciding who gets to have a future.
Right. It frames policies that restrict healthy reproduction as attempts to decide which communities get to have a future and which do not.
That flows directly into the childhood life stage, which looks at what happens to those children once they are born. The plant teachers here are lavender, nettle, and yarrow.
Those plants represent protection, nourishment, and resilience.
Nettle makes sense there, with the sting.
Yeah, nettle is incredibly nutrient-dense, but has a stinging defense mechanism. It symbolizes the need for boundaries and protection.
And the syllabus pairs those protective plants with the history of the Indian Child Welfare Act, or ICWA, as well as the trauma of boarding schools and family separation.
Right, and to understand why ICWA is included here, we have to look at the history the students are reading about.
Let's do that.
The Indian Child Welfare Act was passed in 1978 in response to an alarming crisis. Native American children were being systematically removed from their homes and communities by public and private agencies.
And placed into non-native families or institutions.
Exactly. So the course uses this history to show that policies aimed at separating children from their culture are a direct form of reproductive control. It's a way of severing that futurity we just talked about.
The students don't just read about this historical trauma, though. They have to process it through a creative assignment called the Children's Book Activity.
This is where the interdisciplinary nature of the course really shines.
I loved reading about this part.
Yeah, the student pods are tasked with designing and writing a physical storybook. They have to take their plant teachers, like lavender or yarrow, and turn them into characters or guides within the narrative.
So a character might be navigating a challenge representing family separation or cultural erasure, and the yarrow plant acts as a guide to help them through it.
Exactly. They are actively writing narratives that replace systemic trauma with resilience and kinship.
Moving from childhood, the syllabus transitions into adolescence. This represents a shift from the foundational trauma of childhood to a time of massive internal physical and social transition.
The plant teachers introduced for adolescents are red clover, mugwort, and lemon balm.
And the readings here focus heavily on menstrual taboos, the revitalization of traditional ceremonies, and two-spirit identity. The syllabus uses the term gender sovereignty a lot here.
Gender sovereignty is the concept taught in the course that individuals and communities have the inherent right to determine their own gender identities and expressions, free from outside colonial interference.
Okay, that makes sense.
The readings discuss how colonial systems imposed very strict, rigid gender binaries, meaning you're only either male or female, and forced these taboos onto indigenous communities that historically recognized multiple gender roles.
Like two-spirit individuals.
Right.
The course asks students to contrast modern sex education, which, let's face it, is often very clinical, awkward, or even stigmatized with culturally grounded, empowering coming-of-age traditions.
They literally do an activity where they draw a line down a poster board.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Yeah, on one side, they map out the coming-of-age experience they actually had, documenting the societal pressures and awkwardness. On the other side, they design the coming-of-age they deserved.
Using their plant teachers.
Exactly. They use plants like lemon balm for soothing anxiety or mugwort for spiritual transition to symbolize affirmation, belonging, and a reclamation of that adolescent transition.
We then move into the middle of the semester, hitting young adulthood. Thematically, this is where the focus shifts from the internal bodily changes of adolescence to the external societal pressures of adulthood.
Young adulthood is where the course tackles massive structural barriers to bodily autonomy. The readings dive into mass incarceration, the history of self-managed abortion, and environmental infertility.
The syllabus handles that last topic by exploring a concept called environmental reproductive justice. Can you give us a breakdown of how the course defines that?
So, environmental reproductive justice looks at how bodily autonomy isn't just about having access to a doctor or a clinic. It is deeply tied to the physical environment you live in.
The actual land around you.
Right. If a community is forced to live next to a toxic waste site, a polluted river, or an extraction industry, and that pollution causes severe birth defects, chronic illness, or infertility, that is presented as a profound violation of reproductive justice.
The syllabus teaches that structural violence and environmental degradation actively dictate who gets to have a healthy family.
Yes. And to bring this concept to life, the students do a mapping activity that sounds incredibly striking.
I was blown away by this assignment.
The pods have to research the locations of prisons and toxic waste sites across the United States. Then they take the natural growing habitats of their healing plant teachers for this unit, which are white sage, hawthorn, and linden. And they overlay those natural habitats onto the map of the prisons and pollution zones.
It creates such a stark visual representation for the students. They can see exactly where systemic harm and state control are concentrated, contrasted against where the earth naturally provides healing and resilience.
It forces them to view injustice not just as an abstract concept, but as a physical geography.
Staying within young adulthood, the syllabus also looks at bodily autonomy through the lens of abortion. The course introduces plants like pennyroyal and blue cohosh.
These are plants with centuries of complex history as abortifacients, meaning they were historically used to terminate pregnancies.
And again, the strict safety rules of the course apply here more than ever.
Oh, absolutely. These plants are heavily regulated and studied purely for their historical and political significance.
The course uses them to explore the historical reality that women and marginalized people have always sought ways to manage their own reproduction, often relying on the land when the state restricted access to care.
The students engage with these complex histories through a triptych activity.
A triptych is a piece of art divided into 3 sections, right?
Exactly. They read an artist's statement about the complexities of self-managed care, and then they paint their own 3-paneled canvas. They use the symbolism of pennyroyal, blue cohosh, and white sage to represent themes of autonomy, resilience, and healing in the face of restricted health care.
It's a very heavy, intense unit. But then the syllabus makes a really fascinating thematic shift as it moves into middle age.
It really pivots.
Yeah, the focus pivots entirely away from youth and biological reproduction and turns toward caregiving, knowledge transfer, and menopause.
This is a crucial shift in the indigenous feminist framework. In Western society, aging, and particularly menopause, is often highly medicalized.
Treated as a condition to be fixed.
Right, or simply as a loss of youth and value. But the course readings reframe middle age as a deeply powerful time of transition,
The plant teachers here are black cohosh and evening primrose.
which have traditional uses for supporting the body through the hormonal shifts of menopause.
The readings in this section also focus heavily on queer reproduction and the concept of chosen families.
The syllabus uses plants like rosemary, which is historically associated with memory and remembrance, and marshmallow root.
What's the connection with marshmallow root?
Well, marshmallow root is known for its mucilaginous, soothing, and coating properties. Biologically, it protects irritated tissues.
Okay.
The course maps that biological property onto the emotional soothing required to care for chosen family members.
Why is the concept of chosen families so central to this specific life stage in the syllabus?
The readings highlight that within marginalized and queer communities, biological family structures might be fractured due to rejection or systemic barriers. barriers.
So chosen families become essential for basic survival.
Exactly. Middle-aged individuals are often the ones doing the heavy lifting of what the course calls intergenerational kinship.
Meaning they're the bridge generation. They're stuck in the middle, caring for their aging elders while simultaneously advocating for raising and guiding the youth.
They are the caretakers. The course elevates this emotional labor, showing how vital this care work is to maintaining a community's futurity when biological ties aren't enough.
That bridge of caretaking eventually leads us to the final life stages, covered in the semester: young elderhood, and death.
Yeah.
How does a course on reproductive justice handle the concept of death?
In these final weeks, the syllabus completes the circle. It reframes the end of life entirely.
Instead of the typical Western, highly medicalized approach to dying, where death is often viewed as a failure of medicine, the readings explore palliative care, land-based healing, and the concept of reciprocal grief.
And the plant teachers for the death unit are profound. The students study willow, which has long symbolized mourning, weeping, and adaptability, alongside blue vervain, which represents emotional strength in times of transition.
And then there's hemlock.
Hemlock is a fascinating inclusion because of how incredibly dangerous it is.
I was looking through the workbook and saw this massive warning label. The syllabus explicitly warns in bold letters that hemlock is highly toxic, completely unsafe, and is never to be handled or consumed under any circumstances.
But they still study it.
Exactly why?
They studied it purely as a metaphor. The inclusion of hemlock teaches students that nature is not just a gentle, perpetually nurturing force.
It has hard boundaries.
Yes, death is an absolute boundary. Hemlock serves as a reminder of the inevitability of endings, the raw power of the death phase, and the deep, unwavering respect required when you are engaging with death-related knowledge.
It demands reverence, just like a deadly plant does.
Exactly. To close out the semester and process that reverence, the students use the symbolism of the willow and blue vervain to create tangible tributes.
Like creating a drawing or writing a poem.
Right, or assembling a symbolic bundle of herbs to honor an ancestor or a loved one who has passed. The readings frame this as recognizing that relationships do not end with death. They simply transition into a new form of kinship.
We've journeyed from birth all the way to death. But throughout this entire 14-week semester, the students are tasked with capturing all of this knowledge for their final project.
And it is a brilliant pedagogical tool.
It's the collaborative pod apothecary. Every time the pods study a new plant teacher, they have to document it in their apothecary ledger. And this is far more than just a list of botanical facts or growing seasons.
Way more. They have to record where the plant grows natively, who its original human stewards are, how colonialism or capitalism impacted its use, its cultural symbolism, and its scientific properties.
It becomes a living, comprehensive archive of everything they have learned.
For the final project, the pod has to present their completed ledger to the class in a 30-minute video presentation. And the syllabus gives them total creative freedom on what this apothecary actually looks like visually.
It doesn't have to be a physical scrapbook.
No, the syllabus suggests they could design a beautifully coded digital archive, a cozy witch's grotto, a pixelated retro video game interface.
Or even an Animal Crossing-style island.
Exactly. The aesthetic is entirely up to them, but the core requirement is that the apothecary must reflect the reproductive justice themes they've spent this semester unpacking.
It has to show how they have engaged with these plants ethically, respectfully, and creatively.
By building this apothecary, the students are actively curating a space of relational care. They're taking abstract, often painful histories of systemic power, trauma, and control, and grounding them in the tangible, restorative reality of the natural world.
They're building a world where these plants are respected as teachers.
Exactly.
So why does all of this matter to you, listening right now? Whether you're prepping for a meeting, trying to broaden your understanding of sociology, or you're just an insanely curious person, this syllabus offers a profound shift in perspective.
It really does.
It teaches us that the natural world isn't just a passive green backdrop to human history. It's an active participant in it. After walking through this course material, a weed growing up through the cracks in the sidewalk, or a box of tea sitting in your kitchen cabinet is no longer just a plant.
It's a historical record.
Yes. It holds stories of systemic power, of survival, of disruption, and of incredible resilient care.
The course reveals just how heavily modern structures have disrupted and commodified traditional plant knowledge. But consider the native plants growing in the soil outside your window right now, wherever you are.
Who were the original human stewards of those plants?
And what forgotten histories, what ancient lessons of care and resilience are those plants quietly holding on to, just waiting for someone to rebuild a relationship with them?
Something to mull over the next time you take a walk outside. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.